Custom GPTs are awful at answering specific questions about your documents, especially the complex ones. This isn't just annoying, but it defeats the entire purpose of using AI, which is to get to your end result faster in the most accurate way possible. It's easy to ask questions, but it's hard to get very accurate answers. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make your custom GPTs that much better and that much more accurate using something called Pinecone Assistant. I'm going to first walk through how applications like ChatGPT read your documents so you understand where they fall short and where the status quo is. I'll also demo a few use cases using Pinecone Assistant so you can appreciate the different level of precision that you can achieve with it. And then I'm going to bring everything together to show you how to build a very basic app that you can hook up to any custom GPT to make them smarter in literal minutes. If you stick around to the very end, I'll show you a very cool and very simple automation that I put together that will let you drag and drop files directly into your Google Drive and have them automatically update your new and improved AI brain. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark, and I run my own AI automation agency called Prompt Advisors for the past 2 years. We help companies in every industry better understand where to use AI in their workflows. I'm going to first jump into some slides so you can set the tone for how applications like ChatGPT actually read your documents. Let's dive right in. Now, why should we care to even solve this problem to begin with? Well, the truth of the matter is, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a business owner, an employee, or just a party of one leisurely using ChatGPT, you've probably uploaded some form of PDF, Excel file, or doc file at some point or another. Now, if you're looking for overall summaries of documents or TLDRs of the main bullets, then things like ChatGPT, Claude, or chatbot knowledge bases will work fine for that use case. The problem arises when you have a very specific question that you need a very specific and, more importantly, an accurate answer. A lot of these softwares truly let you down when it comes to finding that needle in the haystack response. Now, if you wanted a 50,000-foot view of how documents are processed and prepared so that AI can answer these questions, this is a very short and very oversimplified crash course for anyone that's not familiar. So step one is these documents are broken down into what are called chunks. So imagine you have a one-page article. You could break down that article in terms of sentences, in terms of paragraphs or double paragraphs, completely up to your choosing. You're then left with shards of this document. These shards are then turned into numbers, and that's called vectorizing. And this is basically converting the format of text into something that a computer can better understand, which are numbers. And in this case, it's groups of numbers. These groups of numbers create a special code or language that allow the AI to associate a word to a definition in its own brain. And when I say vector, it probably looks very similar to the very first portion of this image, where you have a square bracket and some form of numeric definition. So the word cat could be -1, 1, 3. That might mean nothing to you, but to a computer, that is the translated version of that word based on the different ways it's been trained to understand groups of words or bags of words in this case. All right, so you now have groups of different vectors, each of which is representative of some corpus of your text. You then take these vectors and then you create some form of map where you plot all these different vectors that are all associated to different words, phrases, sentences, etc. This is the part that confuses people, which is why I'm going to try to oversimplify it as much as possible. To make this a lot simpler to understand, imagine you're asking a basic question, like, what are the hours of operation for a given restaurant? And let's assume that we had the entire menu that had the hours of operation and all the dishes as a PDF that we then chunked, we created shards from, we created vectors from, where we translated those menu items to actual numbers to represent those menu items, and then all of that was in this map that we see on screen. If you say, what are the hours of operation, it will try to look through this map for the closest words or sentences that are similar to the meaning of the question that I asked. So it will look for something that's like the word office, or like the word office hours, or like hours of operation, and find the most similar ways to refer to my question as possible and provide me with the top X amount of matches. The more detailed and comprehensive my map, the higher the likelihood that I'll find the response I'm looking for. And the top matches that are returned are typically based on the distance of different points on this map and the proximity to those words to the very question that I asked. So again, if I ask a different question, which is, do you have gluten-free options? and there's 3 different items that are gluten-free, then the highest likelihood keywords that will match my question are the words gluten-free. So anything associated to those points on this map will most likely end up in my top matches. Now, if this is still fuzzy, I like to use the example or analogy of something like the predictive text of Google Maps. So when you go into Google Maps, Waze, Apple Maps, whatever your map of choice, and you start writing the name of your location, assuming it's not bookmarked anywhere, it'll start to predict what you're trying to actually write. So if you write the word PAR, you can see here it's recommending Parramatta, maybe based on the proximity of the location to your IP address, Paris, Piranha, etc. Now it's doing this in real time, and the way these softwares work is that you actually have to submit the question or upload the file to be suggested an answer. When you upload a file to ChatGPT, it's going to try to do this similar operation, but again, not in real time, where it tries to look through the file very quickly, seeing the different hierarchy of the different meanings in that document, and try to associate what is the highest likelihood answer based on all the keywords, sentences, and associated context to that actual question you're asking. To add a further analogy, let's go back to the map before. Let's assume that the question you're asking acts as one small point on this map that acts as the core destination. You ideally want to find the closest matches to that destination as possible. So that proximity little word or keyword could be here, another one could be here, and this one could seem more similar to the destination you're looking for because it's a shorter distance to that X, and then this one could be a little bit more vaguely associated to that destination, which is your end question, and you can imagine this can keep going over and over, and that's how you start ranking the different responses to your question. Now, you might be asking the question still, Mark, I repeat, why should I care? Well, you should care because most tools, including ChatGPT, Claude, and the rest, all try to use very lower level, fast, and cheap versions of this, principally because, and most likely because, they serve millions of people and there's millions of files, so they've had to probably find the most cost-efficient way to process them. Now, the inevitable consequence of that is that when you ask a very specific needle-in-a-haystack question, odds are you won't get the response you're looking for. And if you're uploading something like an RFP or a financial document, and you're relying on it being able to grab those small details to create something like an email to your boss, a presentation for your board, or some form of brief that's very important, you don't want to have to double and triple check that the AI did what it's supposed to do. You can liken a lot of these tools to something like a scanner or a glorified Command F or Control F, depending on whatever system you use, where you're literally just kind of searching for related keywords and not really getting into the meaning, let alone truly referencing where your responses are coming from in terms of which page, which paragraph, so you can actually identify and verify that the response you get from these tools is accurate. Now, what's even worse is sometimes you can not only receive the wrong response from the Control F or the search it did, but the LLM underlying it can also hallucinate at the same time. So you can have GPT create some BS response on top of retrieving the BS answer from your document, which is the worst combination, and it happens a lot more often, especially with much larger files that span hundreds of pages, where this becomes a lot more of an issue. Now, I've shown you at a high level how these work and what the status quo is, and now I'm going to show you my solution to it, or at least the one that I found, until these technologies are going to catch up inevitably and become way better at making more meaningful analysis when you upload any form of file and ask a question. Pinecone Assistant is a framework that can help your assistant, or in this case the AI, actually speak to and read the documentation you provide it before it even sends it to any form of large language model to come up with a response. So you have an extra layer of defense that if the answer doesn't actually exist or it doesn't find quote unquote a match in your document, it won't respond at all. Instead of making some form of half-baked response or a completely hallucinated response, it just won't answer. And if it does answer, it'll reference exactly where in that document it's getting that response from. So you can double check that it got the response you're looking for and expect. Ultimately, the result is either a response directly from your document, or it just says, I don't know, which, as you know, is one of my favorite things from LLMs, is if they say I don't know, I can trust them more. Now, I've done more than enough talking, so let's actually jump in and try Pinecone Assistant so you can better understand what I'm referring to. All right, so let's say we take some form of credit card coverage plan. And I'm in Canada, so we have a bank called TD here. And this is the benefits for one of their credit cards. It's the TD Aeroplan Visa Infinite Card. So we have things in here like your travel, medical insurance certificate, trip cancellation, trip interruption, common carrier travel accident, and all these different things that are pretty common to all credit card statements. All right, so if we go down to a random page here and we say, what are the maximum number of covered days for hospitalization? Okay, the departure date, etc. Okay. So if we ask this question to something like ChatGPT, sometimes it could get the right answer. But if we were to download this and upload it into Pinecone Assistant, you'll see exactly what it'll do. So if we go into Pinecone, and you can create a free account, you can even test this out for free, to the best of my knowledge. You'll see something like this when you log in. If you go to this tab called Assistant, you'll be able to create your own assistant. So you can call this something like my trial, and then you can click on Create Assistant. You'll get some form of chat interface like this, which you'll be very familiar with. And if you go to the right-hand side, you can click on here, and you can upload the file. So if you upload this PDF, as long as it's below 10 megabytes, it'll be eligible to be imported. And when you import it, it's going to do something pretty special. Now, Pinecone, if I haven't gone over, is a vector database company. So that whole process I broke down for you, up until now, I've had to build it myself manually using a lot of Python, and I use one of the providers called Pinecone here to help do that part where it converts text into numbers. Now, what's cool here is that entire process that I broke down for you, typically, again, I'd have to do manually using some form of frameworks like LangChain, Llama Index, stuff that you might not have heard of and you might not need to ever hear of. In this case, it did that entire process of finding the best way to break down that file, breaking down and chunking that file into the best sizes it deemed appropriate. Then it converted those chunks to numbers, those numbers to vectors, those vectors to that map we looked at, which is called like an embedding space. And then it categorized all that and finished in literally under a minute. All right, so if we go down here to a random page, let's see here, emergency relief of dental pain. Treatment for emergency relief of dental pain is covered up to a maximum of $200. All right, so if we go back here and we say, how much am I covered for dental pain if I travel? It should come back with a response and an actual page number of where to find that. So if we go here, if you experience dental pain while traveling, you are covered for emergency relief up to $200. And then it'll say first paragraph of page 6. So if we go here, page 6, I think it's considering this whole thing a paragraph because it's all mushed together, but it gets the page right, and you can see it's getting that perfectly fine. If you go to a different page here, let's say near the bottom, what is the number to submit a claim? Let's ask that. Number to submit claim. It references page 11 to 12, 23 to 24, so everywhere where it actually finds that response. So in this case, we're looking at page 11, which is here between pages 11 to 12. And what's cool is it finds the fact that there might be an overflow of this paragraph onto the next page because it's mentioned here as well. And actually, instead of just saying individually 11, 12, it says both of them are kind of connected in terms of meaning, and they both have this number that you can refer to. Now you might look at this and say, well, I think I could upload this file to GPT and it would get those answers right too. And you might be right. But what happens when you get a file like this, which is the Future of Growth Report from the World Economic Forum for 2024? And if you go to this file and download it for free, it's 291 pages. So when I went down, I went through a bunch of random pages here, and I asked a question, which is, in Germany, what is the score for transportation? So it went through all these countries, and it scored all these different components. So you can see here, Australia, it looks for availability of talent, and it scores it out of 100. If we look at mobile network coverage, it also scores that. So if we go to my question here, what is the core score for transportation? It says it's 60.9. It's on page 1 106. So if we go to the document and we go to page 106, let's put that here. And then we zoom out just a tad and we scroll down. And you can see here, it took me literally a minute myself to find it. Access to transport and housing is indeed 60.9. Now notice how this is one of hundreds of thousands of needles in haystacks as you go from country to country. And when we gave this exact same question to GPT, uploading the PDF as is, it said that for Germany, the access to transport and housing is 72.93, which is not the correct answer. And if we test another one here, let's test something a bit more bespoke. So let's say Greece sustainability score. What's Greece's sustainability score? There we go. Let me misspell it on purpose. That might help. You'll see that it's 45.8, and I can find it on page 110. And would you look at that? It's on here, 45.8. And let's see if there's anything on 110. It might be actually referring to it off of this table because it trusts this table more. And it'll take me a second to find it myself. All right, and there it is, 45.8. So it wasn't wrong. It just probably found the most trusted portion. So let's ask the same thing to GPT, and it totally could get it right, but it's the idea of being right 99% of the time is ideal. So what is Greece's sustainability score? Now the interesting thing here is it said that Greece's sustainability score is 45.78, even though in the file itself it says 45.8, it says 45.8, and it's all rounded to the first decimal. So I don't know where it got that 7 from. Now, the answer, again, is technically correct, but it's about how correct is it at some point. Now, hopefully you get the general idea here that Pinecone Assistant is designed to have what's called grounded generation, meaning it tries to come up with the response only if it exists exactly as you ask for it in the document itself. So it didn't come back with 45.78, it said exactly 45.8 as it literally is carbon copy in the document itself. And again, if you're doing something like number crunching or very large financial documents that can span hundreds of pages, I literally loaded the Canadian federal budget, which has over 500 pages full of dense information. And if I pull it up for you and double click here, you'll see exactly how detailed it is. If you go on a very random page here, like this table, one thing that Pinecone Assistant does a lot better than typical applications is it's really good at processing tabular data. Now, it's not perfect, but it's really accurate for a lot of these questions. So if I take the risk of actually demoing this to you live, what I can do is here, I can go back to the files, I can click on upload, I can go to here and go to the budget, and then it's under 10 megabytes, so I should be good to go from that angle. And what I'll do is I'll clear the chat. There we go. And what's cool is as of, I think, a week ago, when you go to settings, you can switch which agent you're speaking to. So you can make it into Claude 3.5 Sonnet if you want. And then if you go back to files here, this one's a lot more beefy. So this will take around 2 minutes to actually process. And that's one thing to keep in mind is that you have a very big file. Because it's doing that manual process that you would have had otherwise to use something like Python to do a lot more comprehensively, this will do it for you, and you can just wait for a couple minutes to have it do its thing. All right, so it finished a minute and a half later, and if we ask a specific question from this table, let's say strengthening Canada's advantage. Okay, safe and responsible use of AI. Let's say how many millions of dollars the Canadian government's budgeting to allocate to that initiative. So, even though there's two files here that are both pretty beefy, how much is the Canadian gov gonna spend on AI responsibility in 2028? Very vague question, misspelled. Let's see how it does. And you can see here, it gets the answer perfectly. And it says the Canadian government plans to spend $10 million on the safe and responsible use of AI, and it references page 226. So if we go to here, page 226, yes it is, and it says 10 million, and it is 10 million. And a lot of different clients that have come our way at Prompt Advisors work for different government entities, whether it be in the US or Canada. that have very big files like this where they need those pinpoint answers, this is a heavenly sent tool that you can use to actually start doing that analysis with much more confidence. Now let's go to GPT, upload the file, and let's ask the exact same thing. So if we go to here and we go to budget, and let's take the exact question that I asked and upload it here. It's now going to read the document, and you can see it did a very quick scan, and it said is expected to spend 2.4 billion in 2028 on AI safety adoption skills training. So it must have gotten that from perhaps the overall sum, if that's somewhere, but it's definitely not the pinpoint question we're asking, which is the safe and responsible use of AI. So you can see there, just that small different detail is answered very vastly differently between those two different tools. So you might be looking at this and saying, okay, you got me. This seems way better. How do I actually hook it up to my GPT? Say no more. I'm going to open a brand new custom GPT that I'll build with you to show you how easily we can set this up so that you can start using this instantly. Now I'll go to this custom GPT and we'll call it Smarter Brain. And let's add a pretty picture here. Hopefully it creates a picture of a brain. And we'll say this helps us get better responses to questions. And then we'll leave the instructions for now. That's the less important part. And there you go, a pretty little brain. And then what we're going to need to do is add an action. So this action lets you connect to code and a microservice. And again, if you are now scared that I said the word code, I'm literally going to give you everything you need to copy paste and tell you what you need to change step by step. You don't need to do much from your end. You don't need to go search on your own. It's all done for you. Now, all you have to copy here is what is in this text file that I'm going to make available to you in the Gumroad link in the description below. As usual, if you love this content, if it's helpful for you, would love if you could support the channel. Otherwise, have it on the house and enjoy. So we'll just take this and we will paste it directly here. And then if it works, then you should see something like this where it says exactly what action is now possible because of this new schema. And this part, which is the URL schema, is the part that you'll need to swap for your own use case. At the very bottom here, we're just gonna, for the privacy policy, we're gonna click on, we're just add replit.com.site.privacy. You just need to put something as a placeholder here. As long as you're not sharing this to the public, this really doesn't need to matter right now. So if we go back up, we're going to create a brand new service together. So I call this Pinecone Assistant demo, and I'm going to go into the secrets. And what we're going to do is we're going to find our API key for Pinecone that you'll have in your account. And again, you can start using this for free. You shouldn't need to actually pay for anything for a while using Pinecone Assistant. And then you just need to call your assistant name. So if we go back to here, our assistant name, like we called it, if we go back to assistant, is demo-assistant. So I'll just take this. We'll go into here, and then we'll just edit it. There we go. We'll update that secret. And then we just have to go to Pinecone, and then go to the API keys tab and copy one of our API keys. Go here, edit, paste, update secret. And then pretty much you should be good to go. This rest of the code I've done for you, and this will also be in the Gumroad link in the description below. And what you can do is when you receive the link, you can do what's called forking, where I'll just share it like this. And then when you paste it into your browser, you'll be able to click on this fork, which will replicate this fork in your Replit account. And again, you can create a Replit account yourself, replit.com. It'll be free to build it, and to deploy it, it'll be literally a couple dollars maybe in a month if you use it a lot. And if you're using it a lot and you want other people in your team, if you have a team, to share it, then you can start spending a bit more money to make it a lot more available and run quicker. But for now, if you're just starting out, you'll be able to deploy it very easily. And I'll show you now how to do that. So you want to click on run, and you want to make sure it looks okay. If you get this response here, the 404, and this little warning thing, most likely things are going well. Otherwise, you'll get a small error, which you shouldn't if you use my code as is. And if you get this not found, it's totally fine. And if you get this not found, it's totally fine. What you want to do next is you want to go to deploy, and then click on auto scale, and then scroll down, and then click on approve, and then name this app something. So let's say Smart Brain. There we go. That seems to be available. And then scroll down. These are the keys that we just set up. We'll then just click on deploy. Then after this is done deploying, if it's successful, you'll get a link that ends in .app. We're going to take that link and we're going to swap it in place of the existing URL that's going to be in the schema that I provide you. All right, so we have this URL now with this domain, smart-brain.replit.app. We'll take this, we'll copy it, we'll swap it here, and then we'll paste. If you get this little indent, we want to go back and make sure there's no indent. We'll scroll all the way down, and then we'll click test. Now this test will send a random question, so you might totally not get a response. The idea is if this says talking and it doesn't say stopped or error talking to, then it's working fine. So you can see here if I ask a different question, let's ask the same question as before. Let's go to ChatGPT and let's say here, how much is the Canadian budget? Because I'm referencing the same assistant, it should be able to reference that exact same collateral. You'll see here I made a mistake, one key fundamental error. Now I sent the response, but there's no actual prompt here. So let's go back and I'm gonna copy paste this name here and you'll see why. So we have no prompt, which is why when I sent that question, it went and searched the internet instead of actually accessing Pinecone. So you can write whatever instructions you want for your custom GPT, and if it's an existing one, this is all you have to do. When I ask you a specific question about the Canadian budget, use and then put a single quote and then ask question, the name of the actual function that's going to execute the search, and then do a close quotation to answer the question. So now if we ask that exact same question from before, let's copy paste it from here. And now let's paste it here. This should automatically invoke that action, that smart action, and then it's going to start, send that question to Pinecone Assistant, go through the files that we just saw, and then come back with a response. And you'll see here it says the Canadian government plans to allocate $10 million in 2028 for the safe and responsible use of AI. So that got it perfectly right. And if we go to here, you can almost see what the app responded with. And this is the actual raw text it responded with. And you can see here it says the page. So if I said, what page was this from? Now you can see it's page 226. And what we could say is in the actual instructions here, when I ask the question, respond back with the exact page it came from. So if we ask another question here from the other document, which is what is the sustainability score from Greece, and we click on confirm, it should come back with, I think it was 45.8 as our answer. And there we go. It says 45.8. And now it says refer to page 110. So we add the small custom instruction here, and then you should be good on this front as well. And just for fun, I will give you this custom instruction just so you have a little crutch there, so you can just take it and tinker it to your exact use case. Now, one pro tip I want to show you is that if we go back to Pinecone, I tested both GPT-4o and 3.5 Sonnet, and it seems that GPT-4o is much better at working with the Pinecone Assistant to find the perfect answers. With 3.5 Sonnet, I was still getting sometimes some incorrect answers or some vague answers to my questions. So if you're to use this, GPT-4o I found to be consistent over and over again, at least for the use cases I showed you in this video. One super important note to make is that for this to work properly, it has to be what's called a true PDF. Meaning if you upload PDFs that are full of scans, you're going to need something a lot more sophisticated that uses something called OCR or optical character recognition. This is awesome at true, genuine PDFs that are made out of Word documents or rich text that are easily searchable and parsable. Now with that, this is actually all you need to use this. But if you want to go a little bit fancy, which is something I like to always do, I built a make automation where to update this assistant, instead of going to the front end of Pinecone, you can use the back end of Pinecone to just drag and drop a PDF and within minutes have it automatically added to the knowledge of your assistant. So this is what the actual assistant looks like here. And if we go to here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new scenario. So I'm building it with you. And I'm going to create the scenario, and then I'm going to import the file that I'm going to provide you also in the Gumroad description below. And then we click on save. You'll get something like this, and I'll show you exactly how to configure it. So step numero uno is you want to sign in to your Google Drive, make sure it's authenticated, and go to the correct folder. So in my case, I created a folder that's called Pinecone Demo. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click from now on, and then I'm going to click on the next one and do the exact same thing. And then I'm going to click on OK. And the final part here is where I just have to add the name of my assistant, which is here. I'm going to call it Demo Assistant, assuming I spelled assistant right. And then we're going to go back into Pinecone to get my API key. So I'm going to copy that here. And then I'm going to paste that over here. And that's all you need to do. You just need to go back down, click OK. And now I'm going to click scheduling on. Oh, I just got to save it. There we go. Scheduling on. I'm going to go on demand. And I just want this so I can show you the demo. You can schedule it so it's always looking at your Google Drive every hour, every 5 hours, every 15 minutes, whatever you want. You can click OK. And then when we go to the Pinecone Drive here, if I go back to my folders and I bring a different file, so let's go to here and let's take that TD credit card coverage thing and let's upload that here. So this, now, if I go back to my make automation and I click run once, if this works, I should get a little bubble with a check mark on top of each one. So if I click this, we got 1 check mark, 2, 3. If it's green, that means we're all good to go. And what's going to happen now is that if we go back to Pinecone Assistant and refresh, and we go to files, you'll see here that it's uploading the TD file we just dropped in that Google Drive. And within a minute or two, you can go in custom GPT without me making any changes now to the actual GPT itself and say, what is the emergency dental plan allowance for my TD card? And then now that it's been automatically added to that knowledge, it's all done hands off. And you'll see here that it got the answer perfectly without you doing anything to your custom GPT or your replit. You now have it automatically connected to this Google Drive and it speaks directly to all those different services. And if you need a visual to better understand what's happening there, you basically have your custom GPT with that custom action. It's sending the request to the replit service that we've set up. It's then connected to Pinecone Assistant via an API request. And then the Google Drive, anytime you upload a PDF or a text file, depending on the schedule you have, it will invoke this make automation, assuming you have it scheduled. Otherwise, you can do it just on demand. And then it'll automatically add to the Pinecone Assistant, which creates this positive feedback loop that allows you to instantly talk to your GPT. And this whole process creates a positive feedback loop that ensures that you go from file to being able to ask questions of that file to using that information for whatever you want in minutes. All right, so I've tried to go step by step to show you how to build a custom GPT that you can hook up that will get you the answers you're looking for. And what's cool is this replit app we created can be referenced from all kinds of services. Because it's a microservice that can be referenced by any API request, you can use this in your actual chatbots, whether you're using something like VoiceFlow. You can use this in any application that accepts an API request. So the possibilities for using this are endless. So if you're banging your head against the wall, your company trying to build your own RAG, which is Retrieval Augmented Generation System, this is a hack, in my opinion, to shortcutting a lot of those cases for standard documentation use cases. Now, if you love content like this that literally takes me hours to put together, I'd super appreciate a like on the video, a sub to the channel, and a comment below. Super appreciate you guys. I'll see you next time.